Benvinguts en el darrer webinar, aquest dedicat a les illes Fèroe. Aquest és el quart webinar dedicat a les particularitats jurídiques i administratives illenques. Els tres primers s'han centrat a les illes Holland, Canàries i Còrsega, dos conjunts illencs del nord i dos del sud. Hauran conformat aquests seminaris coordinats pel doctor Miguel Carranza, a qui agraeixo la seva disposició i feina. Aprofito per anunciar dues activitats més de la càtedra. Una el 12 de novembre, aquesta serà en línia i estarà dedicada a l'economia blava, amb experts de les illes de Malta i Xipre. I dia 13 de desembre, un seminari presencial titulat Del sud global cap al nord global, causes polítiques i impactes de les migracions a la Unió Europea. I ara, sense més dilació, pas la paraula a la tècnica de la càtedra, la senyora Margalida Salom, perquè vos donarà unes instruccions.
Hola, buenas tardes a tots. Vos explicaré primer en català and then in English, so we can all understand. Per tant, com que el professor Johnny Grotino em donarà la xerrada en anglès, si aneu aquí a la plataforma de Zoom mateix, en aquesta pantalla, podeu anar a l'opció mostrar subtítols i podeu activar la traducció. I és important que trieu l'idioma en què hablo, que surt anglès en aquest cas, que serà l'idioma del professor, i l'idioma de subtítols és que vosaltres elegiu. I ara passaré a explicar-ho en anglès. So, Professor Johnny, we are just explaining that our participants can activate the subtitles. If you want to do the same, we have just activated this option. So you go to show subtitles and you can activate them as well. You just select the translation on and you can choose the language you want to see the subtitles. And sí, ara ho deixaré escrit de totes formes en el xat i moltes gràcies a tots per venir. Deixo la paraula al doctor Miguel Carranza.
Thank you, Margalida. Dear Professor John Angrutino, I can see you now. I'm glad of that. First of all, I would like to extend a warm welcome and express our deepest gratitude for your participation in this webinar. It makes me very happy. We are truly honored to have the opportunity to benefit from your vast knowledge and experience and to know more deeper your islands. This webinar is part of the Insular Legal and Administrative Particularities series, where we have previously discussed the cases of the Alan Islands, the Canary Islands, and Corsica. We are particularly excited to learn about the Fèroe Islands, unique context from someone with your STEAM background. Before we proceed, I would like to kindly ask for your understanding as I will introduce you in Catalan, which is an important part of our own culture. As an island territory, we believe that preserving every element of our insular identity, including our language, is crucial. Once again, thank you very much, Professor Grotino, for being here today. Bona tarda a tots i totes. Vull començar expressant el meu més profund agraïment a l'equip de la Càtedra de la Insularitat per haver-me donat l'oportunitat de col·laborar en aquest projecte tan important per als estudis i la recerca que he desenvolupat. Gràcies de tot cor a Margalida, a Cristian, al doctor Maurici Ruiz, però sobretot a la doctora Joana Maria Seguí per tot el seu suport i la seva dedicació. Aquest cicle de seminaris ha estat de suma importància en la nostra recerca d'un futur millor, no només per a les nostres estimades Illes Balears, sinó que pot esdevenir l'eix des del qual la col·laboració entre illes i el benestar insular es faci més fort. També aprofito per anunciar que actualment estic desenvolupant un quart curs a la UNED titulat Autonomies Insulars Comparades, al qual convido a tothom a estar-ne pendent per conèixer la realitat de les illes Açores, de Sardenya i aprofundir en la metodologia d'estudi de l'autonomia insular. Moltes gràcies. Avui podrem aprendre d'un altre arxipèlag, concretament de les Illes Fèroe, de la mà del professor Johnny Grotinum. És economista amb un màster de la Universitat de Copenhague de l'any 2003, amb una tesi sobre l'anàlisi d'equilibri general computable de qüestions de finances públiques per a les Illes Fèroe. Actualment és professor a la Universitat de les Illes Fèroe i presideix el Consell Econòmic de les Illes Fèroe i el Consell d'Administració del Banc Governamental d'aquestes illes. Té 12 anys d'experiència laboral en el sector bancari i també ha treballat durant 3 anys en la gestió pública com a director executiu de l'Hospital Nacional i de la cadena de televisió i ràdio nacional. Va néixer a les Illes Fèroe l'any 1975. Now everybody have the background about your biography. We are glad to hear you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry for the technical difficulties in getting into the Zoom with the video. So I'm now in two participants with one on the iPhone with my video and another with my computer with a presentation. But somehow we'll get through this, I'm sure. And I extend a thanks for the invitation to participate in this and dwell somewhat on my home islands, the Faroe Islands, and share with you some knowledge and insight on the economic developments and political developments of the Faroes. In this first slide, I just show you're all from island communities, and you know the challenge of pointing out where you are in the world, wherever you go. But here we are up in the North Atlantic. My topic for the presentation, let's see if I can move here. There you are. So basically, I'm gonna walk you through some of the economic and political developments that have marked the Faroe Islands during the last 50, 100 years. But of course, it's we only have an hour, so it will be some just points, touch points for the history, but especially focusing on the recent decades and the developments we've seen there. And I'm gonna start off with just a short presentation. So this picture is from our national day of celebration, where we celebrate our community and our historic roots from Norway, actually, which were the original settlers for the Faroes. But today we're a part of the Danish kingdom. But so shortly, now you have already presented me, but I'm just gonna point out the current positions, which somehow I think also show some of the important institutions in the Faroe Islands as a modern economy. So I'm a teaching lecturer at the university, and which is situated in the island's capital of Tórshavn, where we only have 20,000 inhabitants in the capital and 55,000 inhabitants in total. And there I teach our coming economists, about macroeconomics and so forth. I'm also the chairman of the Economic Council, which is an institution set up to provide advice to our government. So it's not a full-time job, it's like a board position, but somehow it has been very important for the debate in the Faroes that we have this organ which kind of is being asked to come up with reports twice a year on the state of the economy, but also regarding some special challenges, themes, and so forth. And then thereby the media always has someone to go to. So basically I'm in the TV news every second week now. I'm exaggerating, but somehow we're a expert voice in the Faroes community. I'm also the chairman of the board of directors for the governmental bank of the Faroe Islands. I'll come back to the challenges with achieving funding, international funding for all these investments going on in a modern society. I'll get back to that, but the governmental bank of the Faroe Islands has an important role to play in ensuring that we have a good rating at the rating agencies, but also disciplining the political system to manage our debt and liquidity in a sober way, but also responsible for fiscal stability in general. So the banking system and so forth. But that has actually not been taken over as a governmental responsibility. The banking system, which is still in a Danish under Danish supervision. So the agenda for the presentation is, just a short introduction to the Faroe Islands. I hope that the next time I'll be invited to participate in your seminar, it will be in your islands, because they are much more warm and especially this time of the year, it's stormy and windy and cold in the Faroe Islands. And I'm just going to give you a short introduction to the islands as an economics from an economic view. I'm going to share some thoughts on Faroese para-diplomacy and the historical background for that. And that is just, an illustration of this special administrative situation that we are in as a home rule government. Because, of course, the international aspect of being a very small, open economy is crucial for success, for development, but it's also crucial for our identity and our weight in going forward in the world. And also, I'd like to dwell somewhat on foreign direct investments and basically foreign investments in general, and the importance of that in the Faroe Islands as a very small society, but with very affluent society as well. And then I'm going to apply those insights to the current economic climate, and dwell somewhat on the recent developments, and also on how the public sector in the Faroe Islands has been capitalizing on this access to international capital markets. And also I'm going to dwell somewhat on how we are taxing, and that's just going to be some overview of that, and also on the recent developments in that regard. So and also especially with looking forward, of course, one thing is the history and the current situation, but also looking into the future, there is a particular need for reforms in the Faroe Islands, since we are looking into demographic headwinds, as most of Western Europe is at the moment. So a short introduction to the Faroe Islands. So these are the a map of the islands and the largest cities, and you might imagine a country with only 54 to 55,000 inhabitants. Why don't we just move everybody to one island? But somehow we've managed to stay on these 18 islands. Well, there are 2 islands which are not inhabited by people, but otherwise we are on these islands. And myself, I was brought up in Klaksvík, which is the second largest city in the Faroes. So it's an autonomous region within the Kingdom of Denmark, and we have achieved a distinct legal and administrative framework that significantly actually influences our economic policies and also foreign direct investments. So we are part of the Danish kingdom, but we are separate. And one specific case which illustrates that very concretely, is the fact that we are outside the EU. So Faroe Islands are in contrast with Denmark, which is a member of EU. We are not a member of the EU, and neither is the Greenland. And so it is an archipelago located here in the Atlantic Ocean. So just between Scotland and Iceland, which I showed on the first map, and we have a growing population, although we are only 54,000 inhabitants. And politically, we have this Løgting, which is our parliament, which has 33 elected members. And you might wonder, isn't that too many? And we often think that ourselves. But they in turn elect an executive body, which is kind of the government, Landsstyre, which is headed by a chairman, which is the prime minister of the Faroe Islands. But there are still some areas, policy areas, I'll get back to that also, but foreign policy, defense, and the monetary policy, and also the judicial system, that is, judges and so forth, judicial system, they are overseen by the Folketing, which is the Danish parliament. And therefore, we also elect 2 members of the Danish parliament. So Greenland elects 2 members, and the Faroe Islands elects 2 members to the Danish government, Danish parliament. And that is motivated by this fact that the Danish government and the Danish Folketing parliament is governing the Faroes with respect to the foreign policy, defense, and monetary policy, and the judicial system. And there are some other areas which are not, so to speak, taking over, as we call it, that we have become sovereign in. For example, the police, they are still Danish. Although the employees are Faroese citizens and so forth, the organization is funded from the Danish parliament. So a few words about the foreign policy and how we are represented, out in the world, so to speak, in international relations. Before I again move back to the economy and the development. So the institutional framework around our representation in the world is based on the Home Rule Act of 1948, where we had we established this representatives, where we can actually have representatives at the Danish embassies abroad in those policy areas which have been taken over by the Faroese government. And these there are these 2 junctures, critical junctures, which has given rise to more activism or more active Faroese foreign policy. And that was, of course, when Denmark joined the EU in 1973. We stayed out and so forth, and therefore we had to, communicate directly with those who we had dealings with, because we are not covered by the EU trade agreements and so forth. And also the extension of the maritime borders to 200 nautical miles, which was done in 1977, which made it necessary for us and our government to negotiate fishery agreements. And those agreements are, still on the agenda and still, necessary to negotiate by ourselves. So although foreign policy has not been overtaken and is still, decided by the Danish parliament, with regards to fishery agreements with foreign nations, it is the Faroese government's Faroese Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Minister of Fishery, which goes out and makes those agreements. And a very recent example of that, where we as a country take another decision than perhaps Denmark would have taken, or at least have expressed their wishes, is our historic fishery agreement with Russia, where just these days, next week perhaps, or the week after, there will be negotiations from the Faroes with the Russian government regarding a fishery agreement for next year, that is 2025, with regards to swapping quotas, fishing rights, where Russian fishing vessels, around 30 of them, get fishing rights to fish in Faroese waters, while 5 Faroese fishing vessels get quotas to fish cod and so forth in Russian waters next year. So that has been going on since, but of course, I'm referencing to the Ukrainian invasion which has also created some debate in the Faroes with whether to continue or not with this fishery agreement. But so far, it has continued. But in that regard, or in connection with that, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Denmark, came on a visit to the Faroes and expressed his clear view that he thought his view was that we should discontinue this cooperation, but the Faroes has continued that. So that's an example of a form of Faroese para-diplomacy which has emerged on background of this. In the beginning, this is a cartoon from 1990, which says that the text says, "Begging in the east, begging in the west, Faroese begging is always best." Well, those are cartoons, satirical cartoons of Faroese politicians. Of course, that's Faroese as cartoons, making joke about ourselves, but also internationally, it was seen as begging, so to speak. We need and we want more resources and more quotas and more funding and so forth. But I think it's safe to say that it has changed over the years. But in the early 90s, we went through a major economic crisis, and this forced the Faroese local government to obtain loans from the Danish government, but they came with some conditions. So of course we had this home rule from 48, but now when we were put in this dire situation with the banks almost, well, not almost, they went bankrupt, we needed to get funding from Denmark, and this led also to a rise in the independence movement, because of course when we were put in a bad situation, we got these conditions and we had to comply and implement some of these policies that they required. It led to kind of a counter reaction, and actually in 1999, the Faroes got the first kind of separatist government, which was organized with a clear goal of getting sovereignty and creating a sovereign Faroe state. But those aspirations ran ashore with some power positioning by the Danish government, where they said, that you can go your own way, but you need to cut off the funding from the Danish state within 4 years, and that kind of killed the party, so to speak. And the separatist government lost the majority, and in 2024, a less separatist-minded government came into power. But the relations to Denmark were still very tense, and this leads to this kind of second act, which has changed things, which was the Takeover Act of 2005. And the point of that act is that in the Home Rule Act from 48, there was a list, a positive and negative list, which was areas covered or which we had the sovereign power of, and those areas where the Danish government had the sovereignty over. But now we can basically take over all areas which we decide on our own, except for security, defense, and monetary policy, and the Supreme Court. So all other areas are up for grabs, so to speak, from our own view. So that was the Takeover Act, and also we had this Foreign Affairs Act from the same year, 2005, on the background of this, separatist movement, and it gave the Faroese government a delegated power to represent themselves in policy areas taken over by the government. That is fishery, trade, education, and culture. And so this has kind of, well, not kind of, but also formally changed the foreign representation from, de facto diplomacy to more, de jure diplomacy, as a really funded on these acts. So today, I would say the Faroese foreign representation is viewed as a more respectable activity than it used to be. So this is an example of a picture from last year, I think. The Arctic Circle in Iceland, where the president of our own Minister of Foreign Affairs is meeting with Olaf Ragnar Grímsson, the president of Iceland. That's discussing some issues. But these participation in international fora and so forth has also posed some challenges. But we are directly participating in several organizations, as shown on this slide. But we also need to coordinate with Greenland on some issues or some participations, and also with Denmark. But the major thing going forward is WTO, so the World Trade Organization, where the Faroes have, have pushed for getting access and getting a full membership as our own member, and not just through Denmark. And I think that will be kind of a crucial next step for acknowledging Faroes in foreign affairs for Faroe Islands. But we'll see about how that can go ahead. Of course, the industry is also very eager to see that we become part of WTO, as it is a very it's a time-consuming effort each time that the Faroe Islands wants to do a new trade agreement with South Korea or with Brazil or whomever we want to trade with, and so the industry in the Faroes have been pushing for making more like para or international agreements covering all issues with regards to trades, and that has and there they see this WTO as World Trade Organization and a membership there as one of the key aspects for that. So with regards to para-diplomacy, I mean, the Faroes have a hybrid form of representation in international affairs, and they go from direct to indirect representation, but these challenges, global, and regional challenges in the Arctic, requires more and more coordination between the Faroes and Denmark. And in some areas we come up, we face challenges and disagree with Denmark, and that kind of comes to a sharp confrontation. This was seen, for example, in 2000 and I think it was 11 or 12, where the Faroe Islands gave themselves a quota for which is an area which we have taken over ourselves as a government, and gave ourselves a high quota for some of these pelagic fisheries, mackerel, blue whiting, and so forth. And we gave ourselves a much higher quota than the fishery biologists, ICES, and the EU recognized. And the EU put embargo on the Faroe Islands. And that embargo pushed the Faroes to pursue other markets. And so basically Denmark was embargoing the Faroe Islands, although we were in the same kingdom. And that actually led the Faroes to make trade agreements and pursue markets, for example, China, but also Russia, and after that, Russia became a very important trade partner for the Faroe Islands. And of course, that has been a challenge also now in the aftermath of the Ukrainian invasion and the war going on there. So there have been some examples also of real challenges and real conflicts. So let's move on to I don't know if how this works, but of course if you have questions regarding these messages, please let me know, or raise your hand, so to speak, in Zoom. and I'll just move on to the economic part and the economic developments. So the historic kind of background, and now I'm moving, those 100 years that I threatened to also touch upon. But the first commercial bank was established in the Faroes, which was a subsidiary of a Danish bank already in 1906. But so this is the first example somehow of foreign direct investments, where I define foreign direct investments as, capital coming from abroad with controlling interest, so to speak, that they own more of the shares than, for example, 10%. In this case, it was a daughter bank, so they own 100%. And also there was established a bank in the Faroes, our own bank, so to speak, in the 30s. And then we were occupied by the United Kingdom when the Danes, or Denmark, was occupied by the Germans during the Second World War, and that was the background for the home rule government, which I mentioned earlier in 48. And also this situation with a military presence can also be viewed as a form of foreign direct investment, since the Brits from UK, they invested in a new airport and made several large infrastructure projects, of course motivated by military purposes, since there were 5,000 soldiers from the UK in the Faroes for those 5 years. Of course, changing some of them, but that was the presence. And after that led to a vote of independence in 46, which then led to this home rule government in 48. And actually, there was a small majority of the votes who were against full sovereignty. So Denmark felt a need to give us a new status as a semi-autonomous region. And still, this is just regarding some foreign direct investments, which I wanted to touch upon. But also, as a kind of more important, which I also referenced earlier with regards to the crisis in the 90s, the Danish government established a form of fiscal grant from Denmark to the Faroe Islands for the Faroese government to dispose over to fund investments, public investments, but also fund operational activities in the public sector, provision of public services. If we look to more recent years, there has also been a huge foreign direct investments in the Faroe Islands from Icelandic and Norwegian companies who have invested in the fisheries and also in the fish farming sectors. If you look to our trade statistics, it's basically 50% is fish, caught fish, in foreign waters, in the Faroese waters, and so forth, and half of it is farmed fish, farmed salmon. So basically, it's all fish, but it's caught fish and it's farmed fish. But during this crisis, which we had, which I mentioned earlier in the 90s, the banking sector was re-established with funding from Denmark. And also now this is a double reference to the Foreign Policy Act, but also in 2010, when we had the Lehman Brothers crisis in 2008 and leading to the financial crisis. In 2010, one of our larger Faroese banks went bankrupt again. And this was another bank, but that was reconstructed with the Danish state banking vehicle, so-called fiscal policy. So that's an example of an important economic area, the financial sector, the banking sector, which has not been taken over by Faroese supervision, and therefore was also responsibility of the Danish authorities in that situation. Of course, this construction in Denmark was also based on that they need to resell these banks who ended up in this governmental organ, and that was also the case with this bank, which was acquired just 1 year later with Danish, Faroese investors and Faroese insurance company. Also, with regards to this foreign capital coming into the Faroe Islands, I think it's important to highlight that in 2010, Bakkafrost, which is the major player in the fish salmon farming business, Bakkafrost was listed on this Oslo Stock Exchange to attract risk-willing foreign investments, which is really a success story. It's today valued at 35 billion Danish kroner, which corresponds to over 100% of Faroe's GDP. So I don't know the numbers for your island societies, but this is extremely valuable company. Of course, it also stands for 70% of the salmon farming business in the Faroe Islands. So it's a very important company in that regard. And it's by far the largest private company in the Faroes. And so that has, in terms of risk diversification, this company and that the model it has gone to attract risk willing capital is, I think, also a model for others to look at, since, of course, I mean, if Faroese investors and Faroese savers had invested all their money in that company, then perhaps they could also have funded this adventure and received the reward, so to speak. But we weren't willing to do that in the Faroes, the Faroes investment society environment, and so the risk, so the Faroese pension savings are being invested abroad to diversify risk and to get a attractive return on investment there, while for example the Norwegian Oil Foundation is the largest private investor in this Bakkafrost company, and also pension funds from US and Europe and so forth are heavily invested in this company. So that's an example of an indirect channel or rather a direct channel for foreign capital to fund economic development in the Faroes. We have seen actually a strong population growth in recent years, and this has been fueled by growth in jobs and the economy as a whole, I would argue. But of course, it's also the other way around, that this population growth has been a prerequisite for our economic growth. But if we look at the economic growth per capita, it is also has grown, which I'll show on the next slide, has grown faster than in Denmark in the last 10 years. So we have really had a very good economic development in the recent years. And of course, this grant, which I mentioned earlier from the Danish state, which is important kind of to highlight to point out this special, political and economic system that we have, now amounts to 700 million Danish kroner, which corresponds to 2.5% of GDP. But that was, back in the days when we were aspiring for, 20 years ago, aspiring for sovereignty, that grant corresponded to more like 10% of Faroe's GDP. So in a way, we have, fixed, or not in a way, we have cut the grant somewhat, and we have fixed it at nominal, at the same nominal level. So the real economic growth we've seen in the Faroes has made it, watered it down, so to speak. So it's a less important part of Faroese economic activity, and also of the operating revenue of the public sector. So the economy is booming as we speak. We have pressure on production capacity in large parts of the economy, and it's been going on for well over a decade. Although we did see a temporary halt in the COVID situation in 2020, but it was very fastly. We moved fast beyond that. So real GDP grew by 5.4% in 2022. It has dropped somewhat. I think it was 4.70% in 23. So over the past 10 years, the growth in the Faroe Islands has actually been among the highest in Europe. So growth in GDP per capita has been, on average, the double that in Denmark. So we have a small open economy which relies heavily on trade with the outside world. Exports, as I mentioned, are concentrated around fisheries and aquaculture. Faroese fisheries benefit a lot from being able to fish in different international waters. So the fact that we're still fishing in the Barents Sea, in the Russian and Norwegian zone, is a strategy for the government and the industry as well to continue to have a risk diversified business model, so to speak. So despite several years, there has not been a significant surplus. I'll come back to that on the public balance sheet. It is only natural to see that some of these profits from the common Faroese natural resources are redistributed and accrue to the general population, and this is a taxation of abnormally high profits. This is called also economic rent or resource rent taxation. And I would like to highlight that as also a new development in the last 10 years. So back when we allocated ourselves a very large quotas with regards to pelagic fisheries, those are fish species moving in international waters. And then the quota was increased so much that the profits of the fishing companies increased substantially, during just a few years, and that kind of pushed, the agenda and the debate in the direction of that these windfall gains needed to be taxed. And some of these quotas and fishing rights were auctioned off, sold to the highest bidder, and thereby, got revenue to the government purse. But also there was implemented these license fees. So the fact that these fishing vessels, fishing companies are issued with publicly, issued fishing licenses in order to operate, they are now also taxed based on that. So that has been an increasing importance for the public purse, that we get this license fees from the fishery sector. And in recent years, also, there have been implemented profit taxation, a special profit taxation. We have a normal profit taxation, but special taxation on the salmon industry also, because they have also seen extreme growth, both on the top line, but also on the bottom line with profits. And that has been a source of extra income for the public sector as well, to tax those profits higher than other companies. So this was the graph I mentioned, that the living standards in the Faroes actually are higher than in Denmark. If you have a very good eye, you can see that in the graph that Denmark is, with regards to GDP per capita, is higher, just a bit higher now still. But you have to remember that GDP is gross domestic product, which is kind of the produced values in our economy. But and that grants we receive of 2.5 to 3% of GDP each year from Denmark is not, produced. So that's an extra, extra level of welfare. So including that, and also including the fact that over 1,500 Faroese men, mainly male, work abroad and bring back a lot of money, income. That has also increases the national income relative to GDP. So the national income per capita is 5% higher in the Faroes than in Denmark. With regards to the public sector, we have managed also, through bad times in recent time with regards to handling the COVID situation and so forth, that where we as other countries kept supporting jobs and so forth, and therefore ran a big deficit on the public project budget. So this is a graph from Moody's from their latest report. They produce a report each year, outlining the situation in the Faroes. They point out that the financial performance will remain sound in 24 and 25, and they focus there on the operational results. That is, without excluding excluding investments. But including investments, the results haven't been that good. And going forward, I'll show on a later graph that we do have some real challenges there. So just a few words here. So basically, the foreign direct investments has fueled economic developments in these recent years, these 10 years, and has been important for transforming the Faroese economy. And these sectors, agriculture, fisheries, and tourism, have all benefited from significantly from foreign investments. The salmon farming industry, has also been heavily supported by international pension funds and other investors, and has, growth extremely well in the recent years. But I would say also, as an economist, they have challenges of, growing further the next 10 years. So there are some capacity challenges there. So the islands, as this is seen from above, are very well equipped from nature to be a salmon farming environment. So basically, costs of productions are lower than in Norway. Norway is the world-leading salmon producer in terms of volumes, but the costs per kilo produced is lower in the Faroes because of lower mortality and lower cost in general. So it's very competitive in international terms to farm salmon. And so we produce and sell these farm salmon to most parts of the world. This is from Bakkafrost annual report, where they show where they sell their fish. So they have their own factory in Jersey in the US and have their own activities there. Have actually recently acquired an airplane to transport these salmon products to sushi restaurants in New York and so forth, but also China and Japan are important markets. So we moved from being very dependent on Denmark and Europe to being more, international in that regard, also with regard to the economics. The fact that our fishing zone was extended and has been also kind of the background for the pelagic adventure, where we have seen changes in the way the mackerel, herring, and blue whiting capelin also have moved in the Faroes and the change or in the ocean, so to speak. And the fact that they've moved more into Faroese waters has kind of led to this increase of our quotas, which again has led to huge investments in brand new fishing vessels, which has also fostered, led to economic developments and economic growth. and very high income also. And also, jobs, production from these new new allocated fish resources has also, fueled a kind of blue economy in the Faroes. Of course, with high costs of labor, it is very much also robots and machines and so forth. These factories are populated with. Just a few words here at the end regarding the growth of the economy and what is what has fueled it. Foreign labor has also boosted the employment in the Faroes in recent years. This is from a report by the Danish Central Bank, where they show the growth has primarily been from foreign labor in the employment. Of course, getting the unemployment rate down to 1%, you need to have foreign labor in order to continue growing. So the fact that we have this separate, entity and sovereignty with regards to our fiscal affairs and taxation and so forth is also of course what do you call it, a source of funding for investments. But of course, making these subsea tunnels and so forth, which are huge infrastructure projects, we can't fund them by taxes alone. So capitalizing on access to international markets, capital markets, has been vital there. And that we have done, of course, based on these good ratings by, for example, Moody's. And over the next decade, we need to, make huge investments also in the green energy transition, but also in infrastructure. There are some huge planned infrastructure projects, and so that will also, be funded by these lending. And there, I want to point out that Moody's also points to this special relation with Denmark when they are rating the Faroe Islands. So they point out this, that they consider it's highly likely that if we get into a bankruptcy situation, which we did back in the early 90s, that the government of Denmark would step in to support us. So that's also reflected in the good assessment and high credit worthiness of the Faroese government. Which has provided us with the opportunities to fund at a very low interest rate. So this is a picture actually from a photo from the most recent infrastructure project, where we have done a subsea tunnel with a roundabout down at the bottom of the seabed or under the fjord, so to speak. So this is from Tórshavn to the most populated island, other populated island where Bakkafrost is situated, the salmon producer, and this was funded by international loans and also funded by those using it, paying for using the tunnel. But this is one of these projects, many projects which have decreased the traveling time in the Faroes. So this map shows how it has developed from 1950 is the longest time of travel from all these islands to Tórshavn, which has decreased, and now it's just the southernmost island where it takes 2 hours to travel still by ferry. But they are planning actually a tunnel for that as well, which is kind of challenging for us economists to try to advise on that, because it's a huge investment of almost 20 to 25% of Faroe's GDP. A 23 kilometers long subsea tunnel. So basically, to round up, to conclude, the Faroe Islands is a top modern society with one of the highest living standards in the world. We are an autonomous region in the Kingdom of Denmark, and foreign investors, they deal directly with Faroese authorities without requiring approval from the Danish government in any respect. the Faroese legislation on company registration and business reporting is very much aligned to EU legislation. There is no joint control between the Faroes and Denmark with regard to return on investments and proceeds from foreign direct investments, for example. So the Faroese government independently oversees these aspects, so ensures that the investments also benefit the local economy. And Faroe Islands do retain profits from foreign investments based on local taxation policies. Of course, in special cases, for example, the salmon business, we have special taxation on that. But we also have this corporate taxation of 18% and also 35% on dividends. So the public purse gets its share of these investments. But going ahead, we do have these demographic headwinds with a huge number of elderly people going on pension and receive pension, but also receive public services like hospital and caretaking of elderly people. And the fact that the public finances have not improved enough during this huge economic development in the last 10 years, where unemployment has gone from 7% down to 0, basically, in practice, that is a challenge. So we have still risks of needing to make reforms. So the fact that we do lose young people, which is the main kind of demographic challenge, combined with the fact that we are an increasing number of elderly people. So if we look at the statistics, 40% of a young generation, they move abroad, primarily to Denmark, to study, and only half of them return to the Faroes within 10 years. And those who don't return within 10 years, they mostly likely won't return. So we are losing basically 20% of each generation. And with the fertility rate also, normalizing in the Faroes, we have had like 2.4, 2.5 children per woman. Now it has come down to 1.9 or 1.8, and losing also 20%, to abroad. This has become a challenge for us going forward. So we as Economic Council, we put reforms on the agenda, that there needs to be increasing the retirement age, and also looking at other ways of funding these fast increasing expenses from the public. So that was the introduction seen from my side. I'm just gonna see if I can perhaps stop sharing or something here. So I move the word back to you as a...
Yes, I think you can close the connection of the computer, the presentation, no?
Yeah,
so we can have all.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Well, I'm surprised, no? It's very, very interesting. I read before a lot of things about your islands, but still a lot of information that I didn't access, no? Like, for example, one of the things that I think I understand it, no? You correct me if I'm wrong, but the goal of the country of the nation of Faroe Islands is the independence from Denmark, with all this road to make the grant of Denmark lower it to 0. No, it's the complete economic autonomy, so you can get the follow step, right?
Yes, I would say so, and with the context I've given, that's, but it's kind of I'm kind of a bit vague in answering that, because if we look at the political opinion examinations, then
We don't listen. We don't. It just stop to. We don't listen to you.
Yeah, we are not listening now.
No. Now I think. No, I think conectar con el audio. Now?
Yeah, I think it's now.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Thank you.
We were
So
losing the better
yes,
part.
I closed the computer. Yeah. So with regards to your question, it's there's a 50% division of the Faroese public with regards to support of full sovereignty and to stay in the Danish kingdom. But the fact that we were in that situation 20 years ago, where we had this separatist government and those decision that has made kind of a trajectory towards even those political parties who want to stay in the kingdom, they still want economic independence. So we are kind of a consensus or on this with this objective of getting full economic sovereignty, so to speak, but perhaps without leaving.
Okay, well, Joanna Maria and Margalida knows that I'm a freak of insular issues, and I don't know if you have heard of Baldacchino. Godfrey Baldacchino is one of the theorists more important in insular issues, and one of the theses that he works on it is that the island regions, the better for the island regions is the highest autonomy, but not the independence. No, even that he is from Malta, that it's an island state. No, but he works in this thesis, no, because he says that the efforts that you can, how to say it, that you don't make in defense and military and all that things, no, you can improve in your people, no, and your welfare.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And of course, that has been one of the things that has come up, which has become a higher on the agenda with the geopolitical situation in recent times with Ukraine and so forth, that Denmark has been pushed to increase their spending on military expenses in NATO and so forth to 2% of GDP. And then it has become highlighted in Faroes, but if we had to spend 2% of GDP on the military, then it's double of the financial support received from Denmark. So I think that's absolutely right, that being a very, very small insular community, it is completely unrealistic that we establish our own military. But I don't think it's so far off that we could in the near future discuss that we should not receive this grant anymore, but instead pay to NATO or to someone to support us in those situations.
I don't know if you know it, but for the fisheries and all that, you use a lot of salt.
Yeah. From Ibiza.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ibiza,
So we have
Ibiza is a known brand in the Faroes. Ibiza salt.
Yes, because I have read it that since early 20th century, the salt from Ibiza is in the Island Brothers.
Yeah. And we also sell salted fish to at least to the Spanish mainland. I'm not familiar with how much the islands also buy of it.
Well, another thing that I see is that all the islands, we share a lot of the same problems, but in different perspectives, no? For example, one of the most important things that I see is that we concentrate all our economy in one thing.
Yeah.
We in tourist and you in fisheries, no?
Yeah.
And the diversification, as you say, is one of the things that can save us in future crises, no? It's
Yes, and I think, of course, I think that's a natural thing with regards to, being a small open economy in this world where, scale and scope, well, at least scale is economies of scale is so important. So if we are to be competitive in some areas, we need to concentrate on doing, what we're best for. So as I mentioned, this salmon farming business, which went bankrupt just 20 years ago, has really taken off, but is also, vital for us going forward, and therefore also kind of risky. But the fact that we have this natural inhabitat, but combined with good human capital, with technology and good education and a good brand, has made it possible for us, to foster economic growth from this sector. Now you mentioned tourism. Tourism is a relatively new growing sector in the Faroes. So the number of hotel beds in the Faroes was doubled just in 2020. So just before COVID hit, we had doubled the number of hotel rooms. So it has been growing in recent years, but it's not. And we look to Iceland and see that the financial crisis there, when the banks went bankrupt there, that created the possibilities for their tourism to take off. But their tourism, I know you are used to these numbers, but their number of tourists are 10 times or something like that the number of inhabitants. But in the Faroes, it's perhaps 1 time or 1.5 or something. So the potential for us with regards to tourism as a third kind of industry, export industry, is absolutely there. But that's a really relevant point you point out there. That's something, a characteristic for basically all island economies.
I think that you have an advantage there because it's less aggressive for the territory, to have all your resources in the things that you do well.
Yes.
And we have a demographic pressure that it's horrible, no? Riots here from the citizens, that are it's not sustainable, no? And we have a lot of housing problems. Because the price for meter for house, it's impossible not to get an independence from your parents and all that things. I don't know, in there you have housing problems? Or?
Yes, we do have housing challenges, of course. With the mentioned demographic development, where we have no unemployment and rising economic living standards, combined with the fact that it has been very challenging to develop housing as fast as the growth has been of the population, that has pressured the housing prices up. But I would say that it's not metropolitan challenges, but it's still very challenging for young people to find reasonable housing. Definitely.
Thank you, Professor. I don't know if someone of the public have any questions or any commentary, or Dr. Mauricio or Dr. Joanna.
I do have a question.
Yep.
So you mentioned that the fishing sector is almost a monopoly. Am I right? Or it used to be?
Well, the fishing sector is very dominant with regards to exports. But I would not say it's a monopoly.
Okay.
It is because monopolies and oligopoly or duopolies, that's often measured by the fact how they can operate on the market. So, for example, Bakkafrost, has 70% of of fish farming business in the Faroes, but it sells to the whole world, and it's a very small company relative to large Norwegian companies. So it cannot operate as a monopoly in that regard. It cannot, get extra profits from the customers based on its market position, but it can operate and get a huge margin or profit by the fact that it has some licenses to our fjords and has a exclusive right to operate that. So there is a parallel to monopolies in that regard, that there's no one who can set up a separate salmon business in the same fjord as Bakkafrost or the two other companies operating in the salmon business. So we have created a system of licenses, which is, exclusive right to these fjords. And that has led to us also collecting a license fee from these companies. So I would think that there's a parallel to exclusive tourism, attractive areas. If you get that, then you should pay something to the local government for those exclusive rights. And that's the fact. Yeah, that's the situation of the salmon business, but it's also a situation of the fishing vessels and fishing companies, that they need these fishing quotas, fishing licenses.
Okay, yes, I was wondering if it was creating some of the typical problems from monopolies, but I understand totally.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excuse me. We know the Orensen Tunnel between Denmark and Sweden, but I am strongly impressed by the tunnel in the fjord, in the sea.
Yeah.
What kind of traffic does it have? The measures by the cars
exactly.
each day or each month?
Yeah. So the subsea tunnels, the most recent one, which was created, which is 11 kilometers from Tórshavn to the most populous island, they have a traffic of around 4,000 or 5,000 cars each day. But there was an investment of 1.5 billion Danish kroner, which is 200 million euros. And that investment actually is funded by a loan of 20 years to repay, and that project is very profitable. So although the subsea tunnel was a huge investment, the traffic was so large also prior to that, but in other ways, and that has shortened the distance from for example, this town where Bakkafrost is situated. It has reduced travel of time from 1 hour to 12 minutes. So that has to the capital, and so they are the pendlers or those who use cars are very willing to pay this the fee for using the tunnel, and that has fully funded the tunnel.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Congratulations for your presentation. That's been a very good overview about the Faroe Islands. I think that we don't know nothing. I don't know nothing about Faroes, but now I have a very large overview. Good. Congratulations. I think that you have a lot of information. Well, I am specifically interested in trying to work in terms of geography in Faroes, and I was trying to find cartography of Faroes, and it's not easy to find the cartography. Do you have some cartographic institute of Faroes?
Yes. We have it's called what's it called? Korthal.fo, I would say, or if you go to the environmental agency, which is US
Environmental Agency of?
Yes,
Fèroe.
Environmental Agency of the Faroe Islands, which is called us.fo. Then I think you would find the court maps, cartographies also there. They have both, just matriculation, ownership and so forth, but also
yes. Now I have connected now. Yes, it's a good source of geographical data. Thank you very much. I think it's a very curious archipelago, because it's absolutely the contraries of that. We have the economy and also maybe the same problems, the problems related with insularity, but absolutely different problems related with economy, related with politician and so on. And it's so easy, so interesting to know this point of view. Yes, I don't know what do you think about, we want to work related with islands in terms of trying to find what are the specific problems related with island, and to find a specific focus of our research is island, are islands. And when I think the initiative of Michael Carranza giving a lot of speeches keynotes about islands is very useful, because we can know a lot about many places and many island insularities, territories. But I don't know, I mean, do you have any relationship with other islands in terms of relation with islands? Fèroe has some kind of good relation with other islands, not very big island, United Kingdom. But have you found this insularity, I don't know, profile of people, profile of territories, looking for, I don't know, do you have any information about that? Or do you think it could be interesting go to this way to find something? Or what is your concern?
I think,
with
well, I think, basically, we are very pragmatic and driven, by that's perhaps because I'm an economist, I view it like that, but driven by, economic opportunities. And I think the fact that we have, made a lot of joint ventures and so forth with Iceland, which is a large island country, I know, but that has kind of been driven by the fact that we have natural share some natural challenges and so forth. But I think going forward, I think one of the areas which could make it also attractive economic to make more cooperation between island communities is the green energy transition, because that is one of the really hard nuts to crack with in the European mainland. They use from green energy from each other, but we need to create solutions for ourselves. So we need windmills, we need solar power and so forth, and it's huge investment. And if we can, by sharing experiences there, inspire each other to make less mistakes, so to speak, or make the best investments and select the best solutions, I think that would be an area of good cooperation.
Yeah. Okay, it's a good answer. I think yes, the energy is a very big problem for all the island, and maybe it's a common point. And this is going to be a question more personal, maybe. We are thinking to develop many activities related with the cathedral or the chair of insularity. One of these activities are related with developing some kind of courses. Would you be interested to prepare some kind of module to our students to teach about something in the same tone that you have presented this this conference, but try to prepare some kind of structure in terms of content. The module are going to have these objectives. These are going to be the main points that we are going to develop, and then develop this kind of speech, but intentionally in a specific course related with islands. We are not many people in this forum, and I think we can ask you this. You could be interested to participate in this kind of activity.
Yeah, definitely. That could be very. I find it very fruitful to do these presentations and prepare for them, and of course to get the positive feedback on that is also good. But also, you know, the fact that it could be in another situation where we. If now I'm prepared for these, you know, you guys professionals, but if I would prepare it for students, I would probably, you know, make it a bit different, perhaps also, you know, involving the students.
Okay. So it could be about for us, because we are looking for try to find out some kind of potential professors in different islands, professional people that can explain what are developing, and try to include all of these activities into a course, and then to offer this course to other people. Maybe in the first time, not in a formal education, but then maybe if it's possible, try to finally to create a course with university accreditation validation from our university. So
that sounds very I'm open for that.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know, Mikel, maybe do you have any question anymore?
No, it's everything. I think we can finish the presentation of Professor Johnny Grotinum. Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure to listen to you. And thanks again to Dr. Joanna and Dr. Maurici.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just one thing. Well, I will ask it by email if you can send me your presentation. So
definitely, I'll do that. No problem.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Johnny. Have a good night there.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.